I want to ask you about political preferences and preference deals. We know the Labor are preferencing the Greens just about everywhere, even the Prime Minister preferencing a radical Green in his own seat. Yet there's been these arrangements from One Nation today where they're going to preference the coalition. That's going to be good for the coalition. Labor are always trying to equate that. You know, the coalition gets preferences from the One Nation. That's no worse than getting preferences from the Greens. But is there any difference? Do you have any serious problems with One Nation policies? It caused a lot of issues in Indigenous relations back in the day. Do you have any problems with Pauline Hanson on those issues now?
Oh, look, let's face it. I mean, the Greens are absolute radicals. The One Nation aren't radical like the Greens. I mean, the anti-Semitism that we have seen increase in our country and the division that we've seen increase in our country is ridiculous. You know, One Nation supports efforts like what we want to do in the Indigenous space, which is to audit the billions of dollars that has been spent year in, year out, which is to hold a Royal Commission into sexual abuse in Indigenous communities. And these are very important issues that the Prime Minister has failed on all accounts across the area of Indigenous affairs, has no plan for, would ignore the voices of vulnerable victims in remote communities, along with the Greens. The Greens are a very dangerous party who are anti-Australian. Let's face it, One Nation is not anti-Australian. So the Prime Minister to compare the Greens to One Nation is utterly ridiculous. And as I've said, you know, they've supported motions like holding a Royal Commission to sexual abuse in Indigenous communities and other measures. So no, there is no comparison at all when it comes to them.
Let me then go to Indigenous issues and the Greens. I was going to replay an excerpt from the candidate Hannah Thomas, who's running in the seat of Grayndler against the Prime Minister. The candidate the Prime Minister is preferencing. And note at the start of this clip what she says about Indigenous issues.
My name is Hannah Thomas and I'm your Greens candidate for Grayndler. We'll fight for truth, treaty and justice with First Nations people, an end to the cruel treatment of refugees and take a strong stand against Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, now you of course opposed The Voice, Jacinta. You and I argued about that publicly and privately. But does that suggest, of course, the Greens still have an agenda there when it comes to treaty and truth, and is that something that they might negotiate with Labor if they have to form minority government?
Absolutely. I mean, the Greens are completely out of touch when it comes to Indigenous issues. It's the reason why Lydia Thorpe left the Greens, because she understood the fact that they weren't interested in listening to Indigenous voices. They have their own agenda. I mean, it's quite infantilising the Greens that we have in the Territory, who talk a big talk about treaty and culture and all those things, but they're behind outfits like the Environmental Defenders Office, who exploit Aboriginal people and make up fake Indigenous dreaming stories for their own agendas to block projects. This is what the Greens are all about, thinking that they know what's best for Aboriginal people when they're completely out of touch. I mean, it was a former Green staffer who now works for Our Watch, who tells journalists how to report on domestic violence and Indigenous affairs and tries to gaslight us to suggest that, you know, violence is not part of traditional culture when we've got traditional cultural payback going on in places like the Northern Territory. And when those of us who've had the lived experience know that violence is accepted in traditional culture. So the Greens are dangerous. They're interested in their agenda, which is a radical agenda. They're not interested in supporting Indigenous Australians to become, you know, get off welfare dependency and economically independent and stand on their own 2 feet. They want to use Aboriginal people for their own vote to maintain power. Again, look at Lydia Thorpe. She left the Greens because she discovered what they're actually really like.
Jacinta, great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.